I want to ask my friend Jeff Stier from the National Center for Public Policy Research to share some thoughts about his experience on the Thom Hartmann show. Bravo to you for braving the Thom Hartmann show, Jeff Stier, where Mr. Hartmann told you that that the left wing does absolutely nothing to promote or foment violence. Odd timing, I must say.
It really was. I was on with him on Tuesday evening, and I go on occasionally to try to talk about health policy and some of my areas of interest. And there was a segment about the healthcare bill, so we talked about that. But they like to have two guests on with, and they covered three topics. And one of his topics was two Democrats dropped out of their races because they were getting threats from the right, allegedly. I've heard since that some of those candidates may have dropped out because they had zero chance of winning. But I made the point that, of course, any threats of violence or actual violence have absolutely no place. And unfortunately, on the extremes at both sides, it does exist, and we should condemn all of it. I figured we'd move on. And then Thom Hartmann from Russian television, RT America, on his show The Big Picture, shocked me and said, "What are you talking about? There hasn't been violence from the left. There isn't any, not since the Weathermen from the Weather Underground in the 60s and 70s. And I had to call him on it because it's just not true. And I happen to live in New York City, and I was coming in I was on the air from the studio in New York City, where my mayor, Bill de Blasio, had supported the idea of the Puerto Rican Day Parade, not only allowing to march, but honoring the Puerto Rican terrorist who was convicted of crimes relating to the terrorist activity, and was recently released, and now is being made a hero in New York City. And so I called him on it, and that was Tuesday night, and you move on. And of course, Wednesday morning, you wake up to the horrible news. So it was just, I didn't think people would really be watching RT America, and they make these claims, and you move on. But the timing was just shocking. Obviously, he didn't know what would happen Wednesday, but the fact that he said that on Tuesday night with what happened Wednesday really just I think hammered home that point that what's going on is that what he was doing in that segment was saying the right is guilty of this, and my view is if there are people on the right doing it, I'm sure there are on the extreme right, don't try to undermine the policy arguments that I would make based on the activity of others. I think that's wrong. But that's what the left likes to do. But at least then you should equally accept the left responsibility for that the left is doing it when people on the far left do it, which they never do. So I was like, let's at least have an even playing field, and he wouldn't even go there.
No. You had the left cheerleading the violence of the Occupy Wall Street movement, particularly trying to cover up the violence that was taking place in cities like Portland. Not Portland, Oakland. You had some of the problems in Washington, D.C. with that movement. You had Baltimore, Ferguson. Again, some of that was organic rioting. Some of that was direct action and black bloc stuff. You had Middlebury, you've had Berkeley, you've had Mizzou, threats of violence on campus all across the place. Vesterly Flanagan, who was steeped in racialism, who murdered his coworkers. One could argue
we could go on forever.
We could go on forever.
And most recently, New York trying to honor a convicted terrorist.
Listen, you're right, though. The problem is, you say, as a person who is mostly on the right on things, more libertarian, but mostly on the right on things, you say, of course, this is terrible, and it has no place. And you say, I accept that people do it on the right. The left says exactly. The left says it only takes place on the right. It never happens. This has nothing to do with us or our ideology, despite the fact that we actually have, well-known people saying, things like here in Dane County, we had one of our former county board supervisors saying, so why can't we kill rich people and steal all their stuff and give it to poor people? Why can't we just kill them? I mean, you have professors saying, can't we just line up Republicans and shoot them?
It's part of the ideology. And what Thom Hartmann did on RT America on Tuesday night was, instead of saying we never do it, he said, we haven't done it since the Weather Underground. Like as if he was speaking factually. And that, I just have to call him on it.
Well, this is what they do, and this is a way to discredit. So whatever you might say that comes next, the idea was to discredit you as somebody who is on the right by essentially saying you're a horrible person because all your people, support violence. Again, it's that effort to dehumanize people with whom you disagree with politically, instead of just having
delegitimize the ideas that even if he wasn't accusing me of being associated with them, he was trying to delegitimize my ideas. And what I like to point out is that you can try to attack me, delegitimize me, dehumanize me all you want. Let's talk about the ideas. And if you can win an argument on the merits, let's have it out. That's good for the public. It's good for democracy. And I think the reason we're having these problems in society and politics today is because the left, more than the right, is unwilling to have the debates on the merits. Maybe I'll lose on the merits. Let's have that debate. That's good for democracy. That's how it should be. Maybe I'll win, maybe you'll win, but we'll discuss the merits and we'll all be better off. And we probably won't have these horrific acts from either side.
Yeah, and you might actually, like some of the ideas from the right, and maybe the right would like some of the ideas from the left. I doubt it, but maybe they would. For instance, here in Wisconsin, I've now Wisconsin parallels here are just remarkable. But Act 10, everybody, Act 10 is going to kill schools, and it's going to make it so teachers don't even want to teach in our schools any longer. It's going to be so terrible. I guarantee I would be willing to bet my retirement that if the Democrats took control of the state legislature and the governor's chair, they would not undo Act 10, simply because it actually has worked that well. So these ideas suddenly, maybe that's not such a terrible idea after all. We're going to keep saying it, but we kind of like it. Tax cuts tend to work the same way, by the way. All right, I want to talk about actual policy, all right? And a very fascinating story that I saw, and I sent it to you. And it was a discussion on, you and I talk a lot about smoking policy with regard to public health, the appalling political nature of the so-called public health groups when it comes to the issue of cigarette smoking and alternatives to it. A story that came out and said that we have really done a really good job in America of reducing people's smoking habits. But it's all in the middle to upper income ranges. Below the middle to upper income ranges, it's a pretty bad problem, Jeff. And I thought as I read this, then why are you trying to make it harder? Why are you trying to make it $10 a pack instead of $8 a pack, or $12 a pack instead of $10 a pack? Why aren't you trying to get good alternatives into the hands of people who actually are still smoking and poor?
Well, it's even worse than that, Vicki. During the Obama administration, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, when they were trying to ban smoking in public housing, also tried to sneak in an effort to ban vaping in public housing. So what we're talking about is, if I can couch it in terms of the left, they like to refer to this as health disparities, which is as if to say the policies that we have hurt the poor, hurt minorities, hurt whatever class we're trying to help with more taxpayer money. The policies we have hurt them, and we need to spend more money on them. We need to punish industry more. But when it comes to something like vaping, which could actually be a market-based solution to a very serious public health problem, they don't use the term health disparities. They don't talk about the fact that there are health disparities as a result of the ongoing failing policy approach, the regulatory approach, which, as you point out, the study showed is working to a degree with upper income and some degree middle income. But for the people who have the least access to information, the least access to try and experiment with new lower risk products, those are the ones that aren't having the success that we'd all like to see them have. And when you hear health disparities, there's a suggestion, well, maybe we're not spending enough on them. Maybe there is an inherent bias against these people.
No, it's because it's not about health disparities. It's about finding ways to regulate. They don't care. The bureaucrats, the regulators, and if they are by and large liberal, they probably are. They don't actually care that poor people can't actually afford that $10 a pack cigarette, but they're still going to spend $10 a pack on those cigarettes. And they could afford...
Or they'll buy them on the black market.
Or they'll roll their own or whatever, and they will still be sicker for it. That's okay. Just like it's okay to say, well, we've got all of these people and there's hunger issues in America, so let's try to make food more expensive by trying to incentivize regulation on mass-marketed food, but will allow people to use their food stamps on organic food, which is 3 times as expensive. It's almost as if the liberals are trying to rig the game against poor people of ever succeeding or getting healthier.
More precisely, in Philadelphia, at least they were honest last year, where they did pass a soda tax, which all of us said is going to disproportionately hurt the poor. And they said, well, the poor are the ones that are being hurt by all the soda, which we now know is not true. We know that actually middle-income and wealthier people are drinking more soda. I tweeted about that today, Jeff A. Stier on Twitter. But the people in Philadelphia were at least had a modicum of honesty to that this last year in that debate when they conceded that the soda tax was not a public health initiative. It was simply an effort to raise money for pre-K education.
Yeah, that's all it was. We were toying with it here as well. The increase in the cigarette sales tax in Wisconsin wasn't about reducing smoking. It was about a big $363 million boost to the bottom line of general purpose revenue in the Wisconsin state budget. It had nothing to do with health. Madison's incentivizing, the use of food card benefits on extremely expensive organic produce. Locally grown produce. That isn't about making people healthier. That's just simply about getting money into the hands of a preferred constituency. That's what regulators are about.
And when you take that money out of the stream of commerce and put it into a stream of government commerce through grants, through giveaways, etc., you also increase the amount of corruption. I read about this in the New York Post about a decade ago, when New York City did the same thing, and they had they handed out $2 vouchers to use in farmers markets, which primarily sell the organic, so-called locally grown produce. I don't shop at those markets too often because they are very expensive. I love fresh produce. Don't get me wrong, I grow my own at my parents' house in New Jersey, in the Garden State, but I don't go to those farmers markets because the prices are so inflated. So what New York City did was they gave out these $2 vouchers, taxpayer funded, and the way they gave them out was through so-called community organizations, which were organizations that helped the politicians, often union affiliated.
Get out!
They gave them out to the group, gave them away to encourage poor people, or at least politically connected people, to go to the farmers markets, which was a problem, especially in cities like New York, and you'll have that in Madison, is when the farmers markets stopped selling fresh produce in, October, November.
Then what do you do?
Then the grocery stores aren't going to be stocked. They're not going to know.
Jeff Stier.
It's a distortion of the market.
I am out of time in this break. Thank you for being on the show today.
Always fun, Vicki. Thank you.
Good to have you on the program. Jeff Stier, Jeff A. Stier, Stier on Twitter. Your